Hello and welcome to Classical Titerature, the show that absolutely has a ranking chart of knights, but will not show you. So the last time we checked in with Sir Pellias, he was still more than preoccupied with trying to get back the necklace that the Lady of the Lake had given him. Likewise, Sir Gawain had gotten his ass kicked out of court, and his cousin, Sir Owain, decided to go with him. After dealing with a very particular knight in a very particular situation, they continued their quest onward to Lady Ettard's castle, at the behest of the Lady of the Lake. This time we will close out Sir Pellias' story, starting with Chapter 5th, How Sir Gawain Met Sir Pellias, and How He Promised to Aid Him with the Lady Ettard. Now, after that wonderful lady had disappeared from their sight in that manner, those three knights stood for a little while, well altogether astonished, for they wist not how to believe what their eyes had beheld. Then by and by Sir Gawain spake, saying, Certes, that was a very wonderful thing that happened to us, for in all my life I never knew so strange a miracle to befall. Now it is very plain that some excellent adventure lieth in what we have seen. Wherefore let us descend into yonder valley, for there we shall doubtless discover what that signifies, which we have just now beheld. For I make my vow that I have hardly ever seen so terribly powerful a knight as he who has just now fought yonder battle. Wherefore I can in no wise understand why, when he should so neatly have obtained a victory over his enemies, he should have surrendered himself to them as he did. And Sir Owain and Sir Marhaus agreed that it would be well to go down and inquire what was the meaning of that which they had beheld. So they three and their attendants rode down into the valley, and they rode forward until they had come to a certain glade of trees, and there they beheld three goodly pavilions that stood there. The one pavilion of white cloth, the second pavilion of green cloth, and the third pavilion of scarlet cloth. Now, as the three knights companion drew nigh to the pavilions, there came forth two knights to meet them. And when Sir Gawain and Sir Owain saw the shields of the two, they immediately knew that they were Sir Brandiles and Sir Mador de la Porte. And in the same manner Sir Brandiles and Sir Mador de la Porte knew Sir Gawain and Sir Owain, and each party was very much astonished at thus meeting the other in so strange a place. So when they came together they gave one another very joyful greeting, and clapped hands with strong love and good fellowship. Then Sir Gawain made Sir Marhaus acquainted with Sir Brandiles and Sir Mador de la Porte, and thereupon the five knights all went together into those three pavilions, discoursing the while with great amity and pleasure. And when they had come into the pavilion of Sir Brandiles, they found there spread a good refreshment of white bread and wine of excellent savour. Then after a while Sir Gawain said to Sir Brandiles and Sir Mador de la Porte, Messieurs, we observed a little while ago a very singular thing. For, as we stood together at the top of yonder hill, and looked down into this plain, we beheld a single knight clad all in red armour, who did battle with 10 knights. And that one knight in red armour combated the 10 with such fury that he drave them all from before him, though they were so many, and he but one. And truly I make my vow that I have hardly ever seen a knight show such great prowess in arms as he. Yet, when he had overcome all but 2 of those knights, and was in a fair way to win a clear victory, he suddenly yielded himself unto the 2, and suffered them to take him and bind him, and drive him with great indignity from the field. Now I pray ye, tell me what was the meaning of that which we beheld, and who was that knight who fought so great a battle, and yet yielded himself so shamefully? At this Sir Brandiles and Sir Mador de la Porte made no answer, but directed their looks another way, for they knew not what to say. But when Sir Gawain beheld that they were abashed, he began more than ever to wonder what that thing meant. Wherefore he said, What is this? Why do ye not answer me? I bid ye tell me what is the meaning of your looks, and who is that red knight? Then after a while Sir Medor de la Porte said, I shall not tell you, but you may come and see. Then Sir Gawain began to think that there was maybe something in this that it would be better not to publish, and that, haply, he had best examine further into the matter alone. So he said unto the other knights, Bid ye hear a little, messieurs, and I will go with Sir Medor de la Porte. So Sir Gawain went with Sir Medor de la Porte, and Sir Medor led him into the white pavilion. And when they had come there, Sir Medor drew aside the curtains of the pavilion, and he said, Enter. And Sir Gawain entered. Now, when he had come into the pavilion, he perceived that a man sat upon the couch of rushes, covered with an azure cloth. And in a little he perceived that man was Sir Pellias. But Sir Pellias saw not him immediately, but sat with his head bowed, like one altogether overwhelmed by a great despair. But when Sir Gawain beheld who it was that sat upon the couch, he was greatly amazed, and cried out, Ha! Is it thou, Sir Pellias? Is it thou? But when Sir Pellias heard Sir Gawain's voice, and when he perceived who it was that spake to him, he emitted an exceedingly bitter cry, and sprang to his feet, and ran as far as the walls of the pavilion would let him, and turned his face unto the walls thereof. Then after a while Sir Gawain spoke very sternly to Sir Pellias, saying, Messire, I am astonished and very greatly ashamed that a knight of King Arthur's royal court and of his round table should behave in so dishonourable a manner as I saw thee behave this day. For it is hardly to be believed that a knight of such repute and nobility as thou would suffer himself to be taken and bound by two obscure knights, as thou didst suffer thyself this day. How couldst thou bring thyself to submit to such indignity and insult? Now I do demand of thee that thou wilt explain this matter unto me. But Sir Pellias was silent, and would not make any reply. Then Sir Gawain cried out very fiercely, Ha! Wilt thou not answer me? And Sir Pellias shook his head. Then Sir Gawain said, still speaking very fiercely, Messire, thou shalt answer me one way or another, for either thou shalt tell me the meaning of thy shameful conduct, or else thou shalt do extreme battle with me. For I will not suffer it, that thou shalt bring shame upon King Arthur and his round table, without myself defending the honour and the credit of him and of it. And well thou and I were dear friends, but unless thou dost immediately exculpate thyself, I shall hold thee in contempt, and shall regard thee as an enemy. Upon this Sir Pellias spake like unto one who was nigh distracted, and he said, I will tell thee all. Then he confessed everything unto Sir Gawain, telling him all that had befallen since that time when he had left the May court of Queen Guinevere to enter upon this adventure. And Sir Gawain listened unto him with great amazement. And when Sir Pellias had made an end of telling all that had befallen him, Sir Gawain said, Certes, this is very wonderful. Indeed, I cannot understand how thou camest to be so entangled in the charms of this lady, unless she hath bewitched thee with some great enchantment. Unto this Sir Pellias said, Yea, I believe that I have been bewitched, for I am altogether beside myself in this, and am entirely unable to contain my passion. Then Sir Gawain bethought him for a long while, considering that matter very seriously. And by he said, I have a plan, and it is this. I will go unto the Lady Ettard myself, and will inquire diligently into this affair. And if I find that anyone hath entangled thee in enchantments, it will go hard with me, but I will punish that one with great dolour. For I shall not have it that another enchanter shall beguile thee, as one hath already beguiled Merlin the Wise. Then Sir Pellias said unto Sir Gawain, How wilt thou accomplish this matter, so as to gain into the presence of the Lady Ettard? Thereupon Sir Gawain replied, That I will tell thee. We twain shall exchange armour, and I will go unto the castle in thy armour. When I have come there, I shall say that I have overcome thee in an encounter, and have taken thine armour away from me. Then they will happily admit me into the castle to hear my story, and I shall have speech with her. Then Sir Pellias said, Very well, it shall be as thou dost ordain. So Sir Pellias summoned a squire, and Sir Gawain summoned his squire, and those two removed the armour from Sir Pellias, and clad Sir Gawain therein. After they had done that, Sir Gawain mounted upon the horse of Sir Pellias, and rode openly into that field where Sir Pellias had aforetime paraded. Now, it happened that the Lady Ettard was at that time walking upon a platform within the castle walls, from which place she looked down into that meadow. So when she beheld a red knight parading in the meadow, she thought it was Sir Pellias come thither again, and at that she was vexed and affronted beyond all measure. Wherefore she said unto those nigh to her, That knight vexes me so woefully, that I fear me I shall fall ill of vexation if he cometh here many more times. I would that I knew how to rid myself of him, for already, and only an hour ago, I sent 10 good knights against him, and he overcame them all with great dispatch, and with much dishonour unto them and unto me. So she beckoned to the Red Knight, and when he had come nigh to the walls of the castle, she said to him, Sir Knight, why dost thou come hitherward to afflict me and to affront me thus? Canst thou not understand that the more often thou comest to tease me in this manner, the more I do hate thee? Then Gawain opened up the umbril of his helmet and showed his face, and the Lady Ettard saw that the Red Knight was not Sir Pellias. And Sir Gawain said, Lady, I am not that one whom thou supposest me to be, but another. For behold, I have thine enemy's armour upon my body, wherefore thou mayest see that I have overcome him. For thou mayest suppose that it is hardly to be thought that I could wear his armour unless I took it from him by force of arms. Wherefore thou needest trouble thyself no more about him. Then the Lady Ettard could not think otherwise than this knight, whom she knew not, had indeed overthrown Sir Pellias in a bout of arms, and had taken his armour away from him. And indeed she was exceedingly astonished that such a thing could have happened, for it appeared to her that Sir Pellias was one of the greatest knights in the world, wherefore she marvelled who this knight could be who had overthrown him in battle. So she gave command to sundry of those in attendance upon her, that they should go forth and bring that Red Knight into the castle, and that they should pay him great honour, for that he must assuredly be one of the very greatest champions in the world. Thus Sir Gawain came into the castle, and was brought before the Lady Ettard, where she stood in a wonderfully large and noble hall. For that hall was illuminated by 7 tall windows of coloured glass, and it was hung around with tapestries and hangings, very rich, and of a most excellent quality. Wherefore Sir Gawain was greatly astonished at the magnificence of all that he beheld in that place. Now Sir Gawain had taken the helmet from off his head, and he bore it under his arm and against his hip, and his head was bare, so that all who were there could see his face very plainly. Wherefore they all perceived that he was exceedingly comely, that his eyes were as blue as steel, his nose high and curved, and his hair and beard very dark and rich in colour. Moreover, his bearing was exceedingly steadfast and haughty, so that those who beheld him were awed by the great knightliness of his aspect. Then the Lady Ettard came to Sir Gawain, and gave him her hand, and he kneeled down and set it to his lips. And the lady bespoke him very graciously, saying, Sir Knight, it would give me a great deal of pleasure if thou wouldest make us acquainted with thy name, and if thou wouldest proclaim thy decree of estate unto us. Unto this Sir Gawain made reply, Lady, I cannot inform you of these things at present, being just now vowed into secrecy upon those points, wherefore I do crave your patience a little. Then the Lady Ettard said, Sir Knight, it is a great pity that we may not know thy name and degree. Natheless, though we are as yet in ignorance as to thy quality, I yet hope that thou wilt give us the pleasure of thy company a while, and that thou wilt condescend to remain within this poor place for 2 days or 3, whiles we offer thee such refreshment as we are able to do. Now here a very untoward thing befell. To wit, it was this. The Lady Ettard had come to love that necklace of emeralds and of opal stones and of gold that she had borrowed from Sir Pellias, and that to such a degree that she never let it depart from her, whether by day or by night. Wherefore she wore it at that moment hanging about her neck and her throat. So as she talked to Sir Gawain, he looked upon that necklace, and the enchantment thereof began to take a very great hold upon him. For he presently began to feel as though his heart was drawn with exceeding ardency out of his bosom, and unto the Lady Ettard, so much that, in a little while, he could not at all keep his regard withdrawn from her. And the more that he looked upon the necklace and the lady, the more did the enchantment of the jewel take hold of his spirits. Accordingly, when the Lady Ettard spake so graciously unto him, he was very glad to accept her kindness. Wherefore he said, gazing very ardently at her the whiles, Lady, thou art exceedingly gentle to extend so great a courtesy unto me, wherefore I shall be glad beyond measure for to stay with thee for a short while. At these words the Lady Ettard was greatly pleased, for she said to herself, Certes this knight, albeit I know not who he may be, must be a champion of extraordinary prowess and of exalted achievement. Now if I can persuade him to remain in this castle as my champion, then I shall doubtless gain very great credit thereby, for I shall have one for to defend my rights, who must assuredly be the greatest knight in all the world. Wherefore she set forth every charm and grace of demeanour to please Sir Gawain, and Sir Gawain was altogether delighted by the kindness of her manner. Now Sir Engamore was there present at that time, wherefore he was very greatly troubled in spirit. For in the same degree that Sir Gawain received courtesy from the Lady Ettard, in that same degree Sir Engamore was cast down into great sorrow and distress, so much so that it was a pity for to see him. For Sir Engamore said to himself, aforetime, ere these foreign knights came hitherward, the Lady Ettard was very kind to me, and was willing to take me for her champion and lord. But first came Sir Pellias and overthrew me, and now cometh this strange knight, and overthroweth him. Wherefore in the presence of such a great champion as this, I am come to be as nothing in her sight. So Sir Engamore withdrew himself from that place, and went unto his closet, where he sat himself down alone in great sorrow. Now the Lady Ettard had given command that a very noble and splendid feast should be prepared for Sir Gawain and for herself, and whilst it was preparing, she and Sir Gawain walked together in the pleasaunce of the castle. For there was a very pleasant shade in the place, and flowers grew there in great abundance, and many birds sang very sweetly in among the blossoms of the trees. And as Sir Gawain and the lady walked thus together, the attendants stood at a little distance and regarded them, and they said to one another, assuredly it would be a very good thing if the Lady Ettard would take this knight for her champion, and if he should stay here in Gronspancel forever. So Sir Gawain and the lady walked together, talking very cheerfully, until sunset, and at that time the supper was prepared, and they went in and sat down to it. And as they supped, a number of pages, very fair of face, played upon harps before them, and sundry damsels sang very sweetly in accord to their music, so that the bosom of Sir Gawain was greatly expanded with joy. Wherefore he said to himself, Why should I ever leave this place? Lo, I have been banished from King Arthur's court. Why then should I not establish here a court of mine own, that might, in time, prove to be like his for glory? And the Lady Ettard was so beautiful in his eyes that this seemed to him to be a wonderfully pleasant thought. Now we turn unto Sir Pellias. For after Sir Gawain had left him, the heart of Sir Pellias began to misgive him that he had not been wise, and at last he said to himself, Suppose that Sir Gawain should forget his duty to me when he meeteth the Lady Ettard, for it seems that haply she possesses some potent charm that might well draw the heart of Sir Gawain unto her. Wherefore if Sir Gawain might come within the circle of such enchantment as that, he may forget his duty unto me, and may transgress against the honour of his knighthood. And the more that Sir Pellias thought of this, the more troubled he grew in his mind. So at last, when evening had fallen, he called a squire unto him, and he said, Go, and fetch me hither the garb of a black friar, for I would fain go unto the castle of Gronspancel in disguise. So the squire went as he commanded, and brought him such a garb, and Sir Pellias clad himself therein. Now by that time the darkness had come entirely over the face of the earth, so that it would not have been possible for anyone to know Sir Pellias, even if they had seen his face. So he went unto the castle, and they who were there, thinking that he was a black friar, as he appeared to be, admitted him into the castle by the postern gate. As soon as Sir Pellias had come into the castle, he began to make diligent inquiry concerning where he might find that knight who had come thither in the afternoon. And those within the castle, still thinking him to be a friar of black orders, said unto him, What would ye with that knight? To which Sir Pellias said, I have a message for him. They of the castle said, Ye cannot come at that knight just now, for he is at supper with the Lady Ettard, and he holds her in pleasant discourse. At this Sir Pellias began to wax very angry, for he misliked the thought that Sir Gawain should then make merry with the Lady Ettard. So he said, speaking very sternly, I must presently have speech with that knight, wherefore I bid ye to bring me unto him without delay. Then they of the castle said, Wait, and we will see if that knight is willing to have you come to him. So one of the attendants went unto that place where Sir Gawain sat at supper with the Lady Ettard, and he said, Sir knight, there hath come hither a black friar who demandeth to have present speech with thee, and he will not be denied, but continually maketh that demand. At this Sir Gawain was greatly troubled in his conscience, for he knew that he was not dealing honourably by Sir Pellias, and he pondered whether or not this black friar might be a messenger from his friend. But yet he could not see how he might deny such a messenger's speech with him. So after a while of thought, he said, Fetch the black friar hither, and let him deliver his message to me. So Sir Pellias, in the garb of a black friar, was brought by the attendants into the outer room of that place where Sir Gawain sat at supper with the lady. But for a little time Sir Pellias did not enter the room, but stood behind the curtain of the anteroom, and looked upon them, for he desired to make sure as to whether or no Sir Gawain was true to him. Now everything in that room where the knight and the lady sat was bedight with extraordinary splendour, and it was illuminated by a light of several score of waxen tapers, that sent forth a most delightful perfume as they burned. And as Sir Pellias stood behind the curtains, he beheld Sir Gawain and Lady Ettard, as they sat at the table together, and he saw that they were filled with pleasure in the company of one another. And he saw that Sir Gawain and the lady quaffed wine out of the same chalice, and that the cup was of gold, and he saw those two making merry with one another. And as he saw those two making merry with one another, he was filled with great anger and indignation, for he now perceived that Sir Gawain had betrayed him. So by and by he could contain himself no longer, wherefore he took 5 steps into that room, and stood before Sir Gawain and the Lady Ettard. And when they looked upon him in great surprise, he cast back the hood from his face, and they knew him. Then the Lady Ettard shrieked with great vehemence, crying out, I have been betrayed! And Sir Gawain sat altogether silent, for he had not a single word to say either to the lady or to Sir Pellias. Then Sir Pellias came close to the Lady Ettard with such a fell countenance that she could not move for fear. And when he had come nigh to her, he catched that necklace of emeralds and opal stones and gold with such violence that he brake the clasp thereof, and so plucked it from her neck. Then he said, This is mine, and thou hast no right to it. And therewith he thrust it into his bosom. Then he turned upon Sir Gawain where he sat, and he said, Thou art false both unto thy knighthood and unto thy friendship, for thou hast betrayed me utterly. Thereupon he raised his arm and smote Sir Gawain upon the face with the back of his hand so violently that the mark of his fingers was left in red all across the cheek of Sir Gawain. Then Sir Gawain fell as pale as ashes, and he cried out, Sir, I have in sooth betrayed thee, but thou hast offered such affront to me that our injury is equal. To which Sir Pellias made reply, Not so, for the injury I gave to thee is only upon thy cheek, but the injury thou gavest me is upon my heart. Natheless, I will answer unto thee for the affront I have done thee, but thou also shalt answer unto me for the offence thou hast done unto me, in that thou hast betrayed me. Then Sir Gawain said, I am willing to answer unto thee in full measure. And Sir Pellias said, Thou shalt indeed do so. Thereupon he turned and left that place, nor did he so much as look again, either at Sir Gawain or at the Lady Ettard. But now that the Lady Ettard no longer had the magic collar about her neck, Sir Gawain felt nothing of the great enchantment that had aforetime drawn him so vehemently unto her. Accordingly, he now suffered a misliking for her as great as that liking which had aforetime drawn him unto her. Wherefore he said to himself, How was it possible that for this lady I could have so betrayed my knighthood, and have done so much harm unto my friend? So he pushed back his chair very violently, and arose from that table, with intent to leave her. But when the Lady Ettard saw his intent, she spake to him with very great anger, for she was very much affronted in that he had deceived her, when he said that he had overcome Sir Pellias. Wherefore she said with great heat, Thou mayest go, and I am very willing for to have thee do so. For thou didst say false when thou didst tell me that thou hadst overcome Sir Pellias. For now I perceive that he is both a stronger and a nobler knight than thou, for he smote thee as though thou were his servant, and thou yet bearest the mark of his fingers upon thy cheek. At this Sir Gawain was so exceedingly wroth and entirely filled with the shame of that which had befallen him, wherefore he said, Lady, I think thou hast bewitched me to bring to such a pass of dishonour. At this Sir Gawain was exceedingly wroth and entirely filled with the shame of that which had befallen him, wherefore he said, Lady, I think thou hast bewitched me to bring me to such a pass of dishonour. As for Sir Pellias, look forth into that meadow tomorrow, and see if I do not put a deeper mark upon him than ever he hath put upon me. Thereupon he left that place, and went down into the courtyard, and called upon the attendants who were there for to fetch him his horse. So they did as he commanded, and he straightway rode forth into the night. And he was very glad of the darkness of the night, for it appeared to him that it was easier to bear his shame in the darkness. Wherefore when he had come to the glade of trees, he would not enter the pavilion where his friends were. And also, when Sir Owain and Sir Marhaus came out unto him, and bade him to come in, he would not do so, but stayed without in the darkness. For he said unto himself, If I go in where is a light, haply they will behold the mark of Sir Pellias, his hand upon my face. So he stayed without in the darkness, and bade them to go away and leave him alone. But when they had gone, he called his squire unto him, and said, Take this red armor off of me, and carry it into the pavilion of Sir Pellias, for I hate it. So the squire did as Sir Gawain commanded, and Sir Gawain walked up and down for the entire night, greatly troubled in spirit and in heart. Chapter 6th. How the Lady of the Lake took back her necklace from Sir Pellias. Now, when the next morning had come, Sir Gawain summoned his squire unto him, and said, Fetch hither my armor, and case me in it. And the squire did so. Then Sir Gawain said, Help me unto my horse. And the squire did so. And the morning was still very early, with the grass all lustrous and sparkling with dew, and the little birds singing with such vehemence that it might have caused anyone great joy to be alive. Wherefore, when Sir Gawain was seated a horseback and in armor, he began to take more courage unto himself, and the dark vapours that had whilom overshadowed him lifted themselves a little. So he bespoke his squire with stronger voice, saying, Take this glove of mine and bear it to Sir Pellias, and tell him that Sir Gawain parades in the meadow in front of the castle, and that he there challenges Sir Pellias for to meet him, a horse or a foot, however so that knight may choose. At these, that squire was very much astonished, for Sir Gawain and Sir Pellias had always been such close friends, that there was hardly their like for friendship in all the land. Wherefore their love for one another had become a byword with all men. But he held his peace concerning his thoughts, and only said, Wilt thou not eat food ere thou goest to battle? And Sir Gawain said, Nay, I will not eat until I have fought. Wherefore do thou go and do as I have bid thee. So Sir Gawain's squire went to Sir Pellias in his pavilion, and gave him unto that knight the glove of Sir Gawain. So Sir Gawain's squire went to Sir Pellias in his pavilion, and he gave unto that knight the glove of Sir Gawain, and he delivered Sir Gawain's message to him. And Sir Pellias said, Tell thy master that I will come forth to meet him as soon as I have broken my fast. Now, when news of that challenge had come to the ears of Sir Brandiles and Sir Mador de la Porte, and Sir Owain, and Sir Marhaus, those knights were greatly disturbed thereat. And Sir Owain said to the others, Messieurs, let us go and make inquiries concerning this business. So the four knights went to the white pavilion where Sir Pellias was breaking his fast. And when they had come into the presence of Sir Pellias, Sir Owain said to him, What is this quarrel betwixt my kinsman and thee? And Sir Pellias made reply, I will not tell thee, so let be and meddle not with it. Then Sir Owain said, Wouldst thou do serious battle with thy friend? To which Sir Pellias said, He is a friend to me no longer. Then Sir Brandile cried out, It is a great pity that a quarrel should lie betwixt such friends as thou and Sir Gawain. Wilt thou not let us make peace betwixt you? But Sir Pellias replied, Ye cannot make peace, for this quarrel cannot be stayed until it is ended. Then those knights saw that their words could be of no avail, and they went away and left Sir Pellias. So when Sir Pellias had broken his fast, he summoned a squire named Montnoir, and he bade him case him in that red armor that he had worn for all this time, and Montnoir did so. Then, when Sir Pellias was clad in that armor, he rode forth into the meadow before the castle where Sir Gawain paraded. And when he had come thither, those 4 other knights came to him again, and besought him that he would let peace be made betwixt him and Sir Gawain. But Sir Pellias would not listen to them, and so they went away again and left him, and he rode forth into the field before the castle of Grantmesnle. Now a great concourse of people had come down upon the castle walls for to behold that assault at arms, for news thereof had gone all about that place. And it had come to be known that the knight that would do combat with Sir Pellias was that very famous royal knight hight Sir Gawain, the son of King Lot of Orkney, and a nephew of King Arthur. Wherefore all the people were very desirous to behold so famous a knight do battle. Likewise the Lady Ettard came down to the walls, and took her stand in a lesser tower that overlooked the field of battle. And when she had taken her stand at that place, she beheld that Sir Pellias wore that necklace of emeralds and opal stones and gold above his body armor, and her heart went out to him because of it, wherefore she hoped that he might be the victor in that encounter. Then each knight took his station in such place as seems to him to be fitting, and they dressed each his spear and his shield, and made him ready for the assault. Then, when they were in all ways prepared, Sir Marhaus gave the signal for the assault. Thereupon each knight instantly quitted that station which he held, dashing against the other with the speed of lightning, and with such fury that the earth thundered and shook beneath their horses' hoofs. So they met fairly in the center of the course, each knight striking the other in the very midst of his defenses. And in that encounter the spear of Sir Gawain burst even to the handguard, but the spear of Sir Pellias held, so that Sir Gawain was cast out of his saddle with terrible violence, smiting the earth with such force that he rolled thrice over in the dust, and then lay altogether motionless, as though bereft of life. At this, all those people upon the walls shouted with a great voice, for it was an exceedingly noble assault at arms. Then the 4 knights who stood watching that encounter made all haste unto Sir Gawain where he lay, and Sir Pellias also rode back and sat his horse nigh at hand. Then Sir Owain and Sir Gawain's squire unlaced the helmet of Sir Gawain with all speed, and behold, his face was the color of ashes, and they could not see that he breathed. Thereupon Sir Marhaus said, I believe that thou hast slain this knight, Sir Pellias. And Sir Pellias said, Dost thou think so? Yea, quoth Sir Marhaus, and I deem it a great pity. Unto which Sir Pellias made reply, He hath not suffered more than he deserved. At these words Sir Owain was filled with great indignation, wherefore he cried out, Sir knight, I think that thou forgettest the quality of this knight, for not only is he a fellow companion of the Round Table, to whom thou hast vowed entire brotherhood, but he is also the son of a king, and the nephew of King Arthur himself. But to this Sir Pellias maintained a very steadfast countenance, and replied, I would not repent me of this, were that knight a king in his own right, instead of the son of a king. Then Sir Owain lifted up his voice with great indignation, crying out upon Sir Pellias, Begone, or a great ill may befall thee. Well, said Sir Pellias, I will go. Upon this he turned his horse and rode away from that place, and entered the woodland, and so was gone from their sight. Then those others present lifted up Sir Gawain and bare him away unto the pavilion of Sir Pellias, and there they laid him upon the couch of Sir Pellias. But it was above an hour ere he recovered himself again, and for a great part of that while those nigh unto him believed him to have been dead. But not one of those knights wist what was the case, to wit, that Sir Pellias had been so sorely wounded in the side in that encounter that it was not to be hoped that he could live for more than a day. For, though the spear of Sir Gawain had burst, and though Sir Pellias had overthrown him entirely, yet the head of Sir Gawain's spear had pierced the armor of Sir Pellias, and had entered his side, and had there broken off, so that the iron of the spear, the length of the breadth of a palm, had remained in the body of Sir Pellias a little above the midriff. Wherefore, while Sir Pellias sat there talking so steadfastly unto those four knights, he was yet whiles in a great passion of pain, and the blood ran down into his armor in abundance. So what with the loss of blood, and of the great agony which he suffered, the brain of Sir Pellias swam as light as a feather all the time that he held talk with those others. But he said not a word unto them concerning the grievous wound he had received, but rode away very proudly into the forest. But when he had come into the forest, he could not forbear him any longer, but fell to groaning very sorely, crying out, Alas, alas, I have certes got my death wound in this battle. Now it chanced that morn that the damsel Parcenet had ridden forth to fly a younger falcon, and a dwarf belonging to the Lady Ettard had ridden with her for company. So as the damsel and the dwarf rode toward a certain part of the forest skirt, not a very great distance from Gronsmansel, where the thicker part of the woodland began, and the thinner part thereof ceased, the damsel heard a voice in the woodlands, lamenting with very great dolour. So she stopped and hearkened, and by she heard that voice again, making a great moan. Then Parcenet said to the dwarf, What is that I hear? Certes, it is the voice of someone in lamentation. Now let us go and see who it is that maketh such woeful moan. And the dwarf said, It shall be as thou sayest. So the damsel and the dwarf went a little way further, and there they beheld a knight sitting upon a black horse beneath an oak tree. And that knight was clad altogether in red armor, wherefore Parcenet knew that it must be Sir Pellias. And she saw that Sir Pellias leaned with the butt of his spear upon the ground, and so upheld himself upon his horse, from which he would otherwise have fallen because of his great weakness, and all the while he made that great moan that Parcenet had heard. So seeing him in this sorry condition, Parcenet was overcome with great pity, and she made haste to him, crying out, Alas, Sir Pellias, what ails thee? Then Sir Pellias looked at her as though she were a great way removed from him, and because of the faintness of his soul he beheld her, as it were, through thin water. And he said very faintly, Maiden, I am sorely hurt. Thereupon she said, How art thou hurt, Sir Pellias? And he replied, I have a grievous wound in my side, for a spear's point standeth therein nigh a palm's breadth deep, so that it reaches nearly to my heart. Wherefore meseems that I shall not live for very long. Upon this the maiden cried out, Alas, alas, what is this? And she made great lament, and smote her hands together with sorrow, that the noble knight should have come to so grievous an extremity. Then the dwarf that was with Parcenet, seeing how greatly she was distracted by sorrow, said, Damsel, I know of a certain place in this forest, albeit it is a considerable distance from this, where there dwelleth a certain very holy hermit, who is an extraordinarily skilful leech. Now, when we may bring this knight unto the chapel where the hermit dwelleth, I believe that he may be greatly holpen unto health and ease again. Upon this Parcenet said, Ganseret, for Ganseret was the dwarf's name, Ganseret, let us take this knight unto that place, as quickly as we are able, for I tell thee sooth when I say I have a very great deal of love for him. Well, said the dwarf, I will show thee where that chapel is. So the dwarf took the horse of Sir Pellias by the bridle rein, and led the way through that forest, and Parcenet rode beside Sir Pellias, and upheld him upon his saddle. For some while Sir Pellias fainted with sickness and with pain, so that he would else have fallen had she not upheld him. Thus they went forward very sorrowfully, and at so slow a pace that it was noontide ere they came to that certain very dense and lonely part of the forest where the hermit abided. And when they had come unto that place, the dwarf said, Yonder, damsel, is the chapel whereof I spake. Then Parcenet lifted up her eyes, and she beheld where was a little woodland chapel built in among the leafy trees of the forest. And around this chapel was a little open lawn bedight with flowers, and nigh to the door of the hermitage was a fountain of water as clear as crystal. And this was a very secret and lonely place, and withal very silent and peaceful, for in front of the chapel they beheld a wild doe and her fawn browsing upon the tender grass and herbs without any fear of harm. And when the dwarf and maiden and the wounded knight drew nigh, the doe and the fawn looked up with great wide eyes and spread their ears with wonder, yet fled not, fearing no harm, but by and by began browsing again. Likewise all about the chapel, in the branches of the trees, were great quantities of birds, singing and chirping very cheerfully, and those birds were waiting for their midday meal that the hermit was used to cast unto them. Now, this was that same forest sanctuary whereunto King Arthur had come that time, when he had been so sorely wounded by Sir Pellinore, as hath been aforetold in this history. As the maiden and the dwarf and the wounded knight drew nigh to this chapel, a little bell began ringing very sweetly, so that the sound thereof echoed all through those quiet woodlands, for it was now the hour of noon. And Sir Pellias heard that bell as if it were a great way off, and first he said, Whither am I come? And then he made shift to cross himself, and Parcenet crossed herself, and the dwarf kneeled down and crossed himself. Then when the bell had ceased ringing, the dwarf cried out in a loud voice, What ho, what ho, here is one needing help. Then the door of the sanctuary was opened, and there came forth from that place a very venerable man with a long white beard, as if it were of finely carded wool. And lo, as he came forth, all those birds that waited there flew about him in great quantities, for they thought that he had come forth for to feed them. Wherefore the hermit was compelled to brush these small fowls away with his hands as he came unto where the three were standing. And when they had come unto them, he demanded of them who they were, and why they had come thither with that wounded knight. So Parcenet told him how it was with them, and how they had found Sir Pellias so sorely wounded in the forest that morning, and had brought him hitherward. Then, when the hermit had heard all of the story, he said, It is well, and I will take him in. So he took Sir Pellias into his cell, and when they had helped him lay upon the couch, Parcenet and the dwarf went their way homeward. After they had gone, the hermit examined the hurt of Sir Pellias, and Sir Pellias lay in a deep swoon. And the swoon was so deep that the hermit beheld that it was the death swoon, and that the knight was nigh to his end. So he said, This knight must assuredly die in a very little while, for I can do naught to save him. Wherefore he immediately quitted the side of Sir Pellias, and set about in haste to prepare the last sacrament, such as might be administered unto a noble knight who was dying. Now whiles the hermit was about the business, the door opened of a sudden, and there came into that place a very strange lady, clad all in green, and bedight around the arms with armlets of emeralds and opal stones, inset into gold. And her hair, which was very soft, was entirely black, and was tied about with a cord of crimson ribbon. And the hermit beheld that her face was like to ivory for whiteness, and that her eyes were bright, like unto jewels set into ivory, wherefore he knew that she was no ordinary mortal. And this lady went straight to Sir Pellias and leaned over him, so that her breath touched his forehead. And she said, Alas, Sir Pellias, that thou shouldest lie so. Lady, said the hermit, thou mayest well say alas, for this knight hath only a few minutes to live. To this the lady said, Not so, thou holy man, for I tell thee that this knight shall have a long while yet to live. And when she had said that, she stopped and took from about his neck that necklace of emeralds and opal stones and gold that encircled it, and she hung it about her own neck. Now when the hermit beheld what she did, he said, Lady, what is this that thou doest, and why dost thou take that ornament from a dying man? But the lady made reply very tranquilly, I gave it unto him, wherefore I do but take back again what is mine own. But now I prithee let me be with this knight for a little while, for I have great hope that I might bring back life unto him again. Then the hermit was a doubt, and he said, Wilt thou endeavour to heal him by magic? And the lady said, If I do, it will not be by magic that is black. So the hermit was satisfied and went away, and left the lady alone with Sir Pellias. Now when the lady was thus alone with the wounded knight, she immediately set about doing sundry very strange things. For first she brought forth a lodestone of great power and potency, and this she set to the wound. And lo, the iron of the spearhead came forth from the wound, and as it came Sir Pellias groaned with great passion. And when the spear point came forth, there burst out a great issue of blood, like to a fountain of crimson. But the lady immediately pressed a fragrant napkin of fine cambric linen to the wound, and staunched the bleed. But the lady immediately pressed a fragrant napkin of fine cambric linen to the wound, and staunched the blood. And it bled no more, for she held it within the veins by very potent spells of magic. So the blood being staunched in this wise, the lady brought forth from her bosom a small crystal vial filled with an elixir of blue colour and of a very singular fragrance. And she poured some of this elixir between the cold and leaden lips of the knight. And when the elixir touched his lips, the life began to enter into his body once more. For in a little while he opened his eyes, and gazed about him with a very strange look, and the first thing that he beheld was the lady clad in green, who stood beside him, and she was so beautiful that he thought that haply he had died and was in paradise. Wherefore he said, Am I then dead? Nay, thou art not dead, said the lady. Yet hast thou been perilously nigh to death. Where then am I? Said Sir Pellias. And she replied, Thou art in a deep part of the forest, and this is the cell of a saint-like hermit of the forest. At this Sir Pellias said, Who is it that hath brought me back to life? Upon this the lady smiled and said, It was I. Now for a little while Sir Pellias lay very silent. Then by and by he spake and said, Lady, I feel very strangely. Yea, said the lady, that is because thou hast now a different life. Then Sir Pellias said, How is it with me? And the lady said, It is thus, that to bring thee back to life, I gave thee to drink a certain draught of an elixir vitae, that thou art now only half as thou were before. For, if by the one half thou art mortal, by the other half thou art fey. Then Sir Pellias looked up and beheld that the lady had about her neck the collar of emeralds and opal stones and gold, which he had aforetime worn. And lo, his heart went out to her with an exceeding ardour, and he said, Lady, thou sayest that I am now half fey, and I do perceive that thou art altogether fey. Now I pray thee to let it be that henceforth I may abide nigh unto where thou art. And the lady said, It shall be as thou dost ask, for it was to that end I have suffered thee nearly to die, and then have brought thee back unto life again. Then Sir Pellias said, When may I go with thee? And she said, In a little while, when thou hast had to drink. How may that be? Said Sir Pellias, seeing that I am but like unto a little child for weakness. To which the lady made reply, When thou hast drunk of water, thy strength shall return unto thee, and thou shalt be altogether well and whole again. So the Lady of the Lake went out, and presently returned, bearing in her hand an earthen crock filled with water from the fountain near at hand. And when Sir Pellias had drunk that water, he felt, of a sudden, his strength come altogether back to him. Yet he was not at all as he had been before, for now his body felt light as air, and his soul was dilated with a pure joy, such as he had never felt in his life before that time. Wherefore he immediately uprose from his couch of pain, and he said, Thou hast given life unto me again, now I do give that life unto thee forever. Then the lady looked upon him and smiled with great loving kindness. And she said, Sir Pellias, I have held thee in tender regard ever since I beheld thee one day in thy young knighthood. Drink a draught of milk at a cottager's hut in this forest. For the day was warm, and thou hadst set aside thy helmet, and a young milkmaid, brown of face and with bare feet, came and brought thee a bowl of milk, which same thou didst drink of with great appetite. That was the first time that I beheld thee, although thou didst not see me. Since that time I have had great friendship for all thy fellowship of King Arthur's court, and for King Arthur himself, all for thy sake. Then Sir Pellias said, Lady, wilt thou accept me for thy knight? And she said, Aye. Then Sir Pellias said, May I salute thee? And she said, Yea, if it pleasures thee. So Sir Pellias kissed her upon the lips, and so their troth was plighted. Now we return unto Parcenet and the dwarf. After those two had left that hermitage in the woodland, they betook their way again towards Grantmesnle. When they had come out nigh of the forest at a place not far from the glade of trees wherein those knights companion had taken up their inn, they met one of the knights clad in half armor, and that knight was Sir Mador de la Porte. Then Parcenet called upon him by name, saying, Alas, Sir Mador, I have but this short time quitted a hermit's cell in the forest, where I left Sir Pellias sorely wounded to death, so I fear me he hath only a little while to live. Then Sir Mador de la Porte cried out, Ha, maiden, what is this that thou tellest me? Then Sir Mador de la Porte cried out, Ha, maiden, what is this thou tellest me? This is a very hard thing to believe, for when Sir Pellias quitted us this morn, he gave no sign of wound or disease of any sort. But Parcenet replied, Natheless, I myself beheld him lying in great pain and dole, and, ere he swooned his death swoon, he himself told me that he had the iron of a spear in his side. Then Sir Mador de la Porte said, Alas, alas, that is sorry news. Now, damsel, by thy leave and grace, I will leave thee and hasten to my companions to tell them this news. And Parcenet said, I prithee do so. So Sir Mador de la Porte made haste to the pavilion where were his companions, and he told them the news that he had heard. Now at this time Sir Gawain was altogether recovered from the violent overthrow he had suffered that morning. Wherefore when he heard the news that Sir Mador de la Porte brought to him, he smote his hands together and cried out loud, Woe is me, what have I done? For first I betrayed my friend, and now I have slain him. Now I will go forth straightway to find him, to crave his forgiveness ere he die. But Sir Owain said, What is this that thou wouldest do? Thou art not yet fit to undertake any journey. Sir Gawain said, I care not, for I am determined to go and find my friend. Nor would he suffer any of his companions to accompany him. But when he had summoned his squire to bring him his horse, he mounted thereon and rode away into the forest alone, betaking his way to the westward, and lamenting with great sorrow as he journeyed forward. Now when the afternoon had fallen very late, so that the sun was sloping to its setting, and the light fell as red as fire through the forest leaves, Sir Gawain came to that hermit's cell, where it stood in the silent and solitary part of the forest woodland. And he beheld that the hermit was outside of his cell, digging in a little garden of lentils. So when the hermit saw the armed knight come into that lawn, all in the red light of the setting sun, he stopped digging and leaned upon his trowel. Then Sir Gawain drew nigh, and, as he sat upon his horse, he told the holy man of the business whereon he had come. To this the hermit said, There came a lady hither several hours ago, and she was clad in all green, and was of a very singular appearance, so that it was easy to see that she was fey. And by means of certain charms of magic, that lady cured thy friend, and after she had healed him, the two rode away into the forest together. Then Sir Gawain was very much amazed, and he said, This is a very strange thing that thou tellest me, that a knight who was dying should be brought back to life again in so short a time, and should so suddenly ride forth from a bed of pain. Now I prithee tell me whither they went. The hermit said, They went to the westward. Whereupon, when Sir Gawain heard this, he said, I will follow them. So he rode away, and left the hermit gazing after him. As he rode forward upon his way, the twilight began to fall apace, so that the woodlands after a while grew very dark and very strange all around him. But as the darkness descended, a very singular miracle happened, for lo! there appeared before Sir Gawain a light of a pale blue colour, and it went before him and showed him the way, and he followed it, much marvelling. Now after he had followed the light for a very long time, he came at last of a sudden to where the woodland ceased, and where there was a wide open plain of very great extent, and this plain was all illuminated by a singular radiance, which was like that of a clear, full moonlight, albeit no moon was shining at that time. And in that pale silver light Sir Gawain could see everything with wonderful distinctness, wherefore he beheld that he was in a plain covered all over with flowers of divers sorts, the odours whereof so filled the night that it appeared to press upon the bosom with great pleasure. And he beheld that in front of him lay a great lake, very wide and still, and all those things appeared so strange in that light, that Sir Gawain wotted that he had come into a land of faery. So he rode among tall flowers toward that lake in a sort of fear, for he wist not what was to befall him. Now as he drew near the lake, he perceived a knight and a lady approaching him. And when they had come nigh, he beheld that the knight was Sir Pellias, and that his countenance was exceedingly strange. And he beheld that the lady was she whom he had aforetime seen, all clad in green apparel, when he had travelled in the forest of adventure with Sir Owain and Sir Marhaus. Now when Sir Gawain first beheld Sir Pellias, he was filled with a great fear, for he thought it was a spirit that he saw. But when he perceived that Sir Pellias was alive, there came into his bosom a joy as great as that fear had been. Wherefore he made haste toward Sir Pellias. And when he had come near to Sir Pellias, he leapt from off his horse and cried out, "Forgive, forgive," with great vehemence of passion. Then he would have taken Sir Pellias into his arms, but Sir Pellias withdrew himself from the contact of Sir Gawain, though not with any violence of anger. And Sir Pellias spake in a voice very thin, and of a silvery clearness, as though it came from a considerable distance, and he said, "Touch me not, for I am not as I was aforetime, being not all human, but part fey. But concerning my forgiveness, I do forgive thee whatsoever injury I may have suffered at thy hands, and more than this, I give unto thee my love, and a great hope for thy joy and happiness. But now I go away to leave thee, dear friend, and haply I shall not behold thee again. Wherefore I do leave this with thee, as my last behest, to wit, that thou dost go back to King Arthur's court, and make thy peace with the queen, so thou mayest bring them news of all that hath happened unto me." Then Sir Gawain cried out in great sorrow, "Whither wouldest thou go?" And Sir Pellias said, "I shall go to yonder wonderful city of gold and azure, which lieth in yonder valley of flowers." Then Sir Gawain said, "I see no city, but only a lake of water." Whereupon Sir Pellias replied, "Natheless, there is a city yonder, and thither I go, wherefore I do now bid thee farewell." Then Sir Gawain looked into the face of Sir Pellias, and beheld again that strange light, that it was of a very singular appearance, for lo! it was white like to ivory, and his eyes shone like jewels set in ivory. And a smile lay upon his lips, and grew neither more nor less, but always remained the same. For those who were of that sort had always that singular appearance and smile in that manner, to wit, the Lady of the Lake, Sir Pellias, and Sir Launcelot of the Lake. Then Sir Pellias and the Lady of the Lake turned and left Sir Gawain where he stood, and they went toward the lake, and they entered the lake, and when the feet of the horse of Sir Pellias had touched the water of the lake, lo! Sir Pellias was gone, and Sir Gawain beheld him no more, although he stood there for a long time weeping with great passion. So endeth the story of Sir Pellias. But Sir Gawain returned unto the court of King Arthur as he had promised Sir Pellias to do, and he made his peace with Queen Guinevere, and thereafter, though the queen loved him not, yet there was a peace betwixt them. And Sir Gawain published these things to the court of King Arthur, and all men marvelled at what he told. and only twice thereafter was Sir Pellias ever seen of any of his aforetime companions. And Sir Marhaus was made a companion of the Round Table, and became one of the foremost knights thereof. And the Lady Ettard took Sir Angamore into favour again, and that summer they were wedded, and Sir Angamore became Lord of Grantmesnle. So endeth this story. And that is the end of the Book of Sir Pellias, the Gentle Knight. Next time we will pick up with Book 3 of the Book of Worthies, the Book of Sir Gawain. In the meantime, make sure to like and subscribe, and follow me on any of these social media platforms, including over on Patreon. This has been Classical Titerature. Thanks for watching.